Hello and welcome to episode 55 of Crucible Bootcamp. I'm your host, King Koala, and today we're going to be taking a look at a skirmish match on Last Exit. And our hero, Ignazi, is using a Voidwalker with a Pulse Shoddy loadout. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So today, the major topics we're going to be covering are how to tag or trade in and out with your team and during engagements, how to properly challenge and cover choke points and doors, and then finally some of the pitfalls and things to be wary of when it comes to tunnel visioning on an angle, and kind of what happens when you sit too long on an angle trying to lock it down with your team. So right here we have our opening engagement. This is a threes match. Now this is going to be a little bit different than most threes matches because this is a private match, and they have revives turned off. So a lot of my critique for this particular game is going to be a little different than most threes because there's going to be no incentive to get an orb. What that means for the scope of this particular game, but not necessarily threes as a whole, is that it's more advantageous to run in and trade into the enemy team when revives are turned off than it is in a normal threes mode, because there's no loss of that 50 points for rezzing someone. And you also don't get that super energy from rezzing someone if you have that perk on your helmet. So there's a lot of downsides that threes have that disappear when you turn off revives. And it doesn't seem like it's a lot or a big deal initially, but if over the course of an entire game, that could be the difference between a single super and two supers for you, depending on how well of a game you're playing. So that's important to keep in mind. So in his opening engagement, he just runs out and throws out that nade, right? And then he gets tagged with a lightning grenade himself. So right here, we can see he's going to throw his grenade this way. The lightning grenade is going to come in back at him. And what you want to do in these situations is you want to give yourself an out. Anytime you push into any single engagement, you want to give yourself the opportunity to leave. So that opportunity means we need to be aware of our escape route, right? The cafe in Last Exit has a lot of cover in it, even though it's telegraphed by these windows here, and there's going to be a window off to the side here, where the enemy can see your movement. They can't necessarily hit you through that window. So your escape route is very clear. It's very easy to execute. The most important thing to do is remember that's your escape route, right? And his team is right behind him. So when you focus on any escape route, you want to focus on regrouping with your team. You don't want to run away from your team and hide. You want to try to run to your team and hide, because even if you die, especially in trials, but somewhat so in threes, you want your team to be able to control your orb right away, because you want to give them the opportunity to res you, and deny that ability, especially in trials, for the enemy team to cover your orb. So if you die away from your team, you're basically making your team work twice as hard in order to do the same amount of work. Like, yes, you made a mistake, but your entire team doesn't have to suffer for you making a mistake. Common spots for you to be okay trading or even losing engagements are on the initial engagement in a 50-50. Normally, it's okay to die there. It's still not the greatest thing to die, but it's okay when you're dying right next to your team, as opposed to you're split off trying to flank and you get picked off and then your team is nowhere to be found. That's not what we want to focus on. So we skate, and again, we're regrouping with our team, and now we want to cover angles with our team, because our initial push didn't work, right? Our initial push, we didn't get anything out of it. Maybe we did some damage, but we took too much of our own to really follow up on that. So now what you want to do as a team is back up and start holding angles, which means that you want to hold specific positions where it's difficult for your opponents to push into you. The way there's a couple of philosophies that you can think about when you do this. With the past Trials map, Dungeons, it was very common for players to hold the lower area with the pool in B, where heavy spawns, below the drop chute. And the reason why that spot was really good to hold was because the corners of either end of the corridor are very, very difficult to push without immediately getting fired upon, because it's a blind push. You never know exactly where the opponent is around the corner, but you pushing through that same door means that your opponents are always going to know where you are. So when you hold these angles, you want to pick angles where it's difficult for your opponent to push through and know where you are, and easy for you as a player to know exactly where your opponent's going to be. Hallmarks of this are any choke points or corners or doors, windows, long corridors, basically anything where you can vary either elevation or location, and your opponent can only push you one direction, one or two directions, ideally. Because most of the time you can cover two separate angles. After that, it gets a little iffy because, if you're looking at two angles and normally the third one is uncovered and you get shot at, or sometimes instead you can be covering in front of you, maybe two angles in front of you, but then the angle behind you is dangerous. So it becomes very difficult for you to lock down more than two angles by yourself. But keeping in mind that when you do lock down these angles, you want overlap between your teammates. So as you can see on our radar here, one of our teammates is to our right in this area, one of our teammates is to our left, and then we're covering cafe. Right? So what does that mean as far as overlap? Well, we're covering cafe, and we have a unique position where we can cover both, or we can either cover escalator, or we can cover lockers and out into the B lobby area. Now our opponent, or our teammate to our right, he's covering escalator and also cafe, and tangentially the corner here. So we have a choice to decide where we want our overlap to be. Right now we can tell that overlap is currently here in cafe between us, 1, and our teammate, 2, here. And then finally, our third teammate is off here to the left. So he's covering B lobby, and also he has an angle down corridor. But he can't necessarily see cafe, but he does have the unique ability to see if anyone is pushing into cafe to call that out. So right now we can tell that, again, cafe is overlapped by our team. And also escalator has 3 people watching escalator. So that means our biggest weakness is getting surrounded and pushed with grenades, right? Because we're so enclosed in a small area that we run the risk of getting, hit all tagged by the same firebolt or axing bolt or lightning grenade. And now those are the risks you run when you do things like lock down these angles and wait for the team to push into you. They have to use abilities that flush you out. And if they don't use those abilities, it becomes very, very difficult for those teams to push into you properly. So when someone says we need angles, or we need to set up angles, or we need to get angles, that's what they're talking about. You want to create these lines of overlap where everyone is cross-firing the same target, and they can easily rotate back and forth to each other in order to cover those same zones. So you're never really alone. Even though you might be the only one looking down an angle, you're never really alone because your opponent or your teammates are right around you to support you as soon as you need it. It's really important, though, if you do start playing threes more like this, that you communicate a lot. You really need to say when the enemy is in front of you so your teammates can very quickly rotate to help you out. That way, your engagements don't end up in trades. Your engagements end up in kills where one person's getting an additional 50 points for an assist. That's really good. If you can finish an entire team fight getting an additional 50 to 200 points in assists value, then 3 kills turns in the equivalent of 5. And you can snowball that very quickly in order to win a match. So here, he's kind of peek shooting. And when you cover choke points, there's 2 ways you can cover the choke point. There's an offensive way, and there's a defensive way. Now, when it comes to shotgun play, generally, the defending shotgunner normally has advantage because it becomes more of a twitch thing by the defending shotgunner at that point. The offending shotgunner has to both have a good twitch shot and also have very good spatial awareness. So when you slide in like this, right, you're sliding into your target, you have to have perfect aim and you have to be able to track your target when you're doing this. Whereas on the other side, as the defender, you only really need to keep track of the one angle they're going to push you from. So if this Titan is in this corner here, really they only need to aim this way. They don't need to do any movement. All they need to do is wait for you to push in and then punish you for it. That is a lot easier than being an offensive shotgunner, where instead we have to push forward. We have to time our slide right, we have to aim across, and we have to line up a shot on our target, and we have to pull the trigger. So there's a lot more steps that go into that, and a lot more mechanical aptitude that you have to have in order to succeed in that engagement. But our hero chooses to do the aggressive push and immediately back off, right? So he immediately follow up melees, which is really good. But then he immediately backs off, which is also really good because if we recall just a few seconds ago, we did see that there was an opponent down here, an opponent sniper. So jumping back out of this lane takes us out of this sight line, right? Our opponent can't see this sight line anymore if we're jumping back out of cover. Unfortunately, we get a little greedy, and we push in knowing that our opponent hadn't left the corner yet. We didn't see him. We had full vision of him the entire time. If he went into bar, then we would have seen it. But I guess we just forgot that he was in the corner, and we very aggressively push in, and he hadn't left that corner, and he got killed for it. So when that happens, it's still important to keep track of your target. It's still important to respect that if you lose the initial engagement as the offensive shotgunner, you've lost all element of surprise, and you're most likely going to lose that engagement. Even if he had slid in and been ready for the guy in the corner, it's still likely he would have lost or just traded in the engagement, as opposed to that full win he would have gotten when he slid in to start the engagement initially. So after that one slide in, and you got away with it, right? You got away. You got out of that line of sight. You didn't take any damage. That was really lucky, right? Don't push your luck. Just like you would in a sniper lane. You get one shot and you need to reposition. Same thing with a shotgunner. If you manage to survive that initial shotgun push, you shouldn't push the same lane because now the advantage is on the defender. So right now we're just waiting for teammates to spawn up, right? This is really good play. We don't want to push out by ourselves. We're weak, so let's talk about trading or tagging in during engagements. So we saw very briefly in this particular engagement, the idea of trading or tagging in is you survive as long as you can without dying and doing as much damage as you can. And before you die, you pull into cover, and your teammate takes your place, shooting on the same target, at relatively the same time, and they start taking damage in your place. So it looks a lot like this. You pull out, you're gonna shoot on your target. Meanwhile, your teammate is off here to the side, and as soon as you take damage, or as much damage as you're comfortable taking, sometimes it's one shot, sometimes it's two shots, sometimes you're absolute, depends on how comfortable you are, how good you are moving back into cover. You're gonna move back into your cover, and your teammate is going to push out and start firing on the same target. So let's number these. 1, 2, and then 3. So teammates and you are here. You're going to move into cover. Your teammate is going to push out, and he's going to finish off your target. Now, this is very good because you didn't die, right? You didn't give any points to your enemy, and you're getting extra points for having assists. This is something that a lot of players want to get those kills, right? You want to finish what you started. You want to have that high KD, blah 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 blah. But it's more important that you stay alive and get those extra points than being a hero. You never need to be a hero. Even the best slayers in this game have very, very many opportunities to be the hero, and they don't take it. They rely more on their teammates, and they get those extra assist points, and they just snowball that as a team. This is a team game. The only time you don't need to be a good teammate is in Rumble, because you're all alone. Every other mode in this game, you need to be a good teammate in order to succeed. You don't have to go off and get 30 kills in a skirmish match to win the game. Because if you can get 15 kills and 15 assists, it's just as good, if not better, than if you killed everyone yourself. So really focus on being a good teammate and start trying to get this idea of trading or tagging into your gameplay, because it's very effective, and you don't need a ton of communication to do it properly, because your teammate, if they're following you around, or if you're following around a teammate yourself, it's going to naturally happen, because no one really wants to die in the game. And if you focus more on how can I get out of this situation, do as much as I possibly can, and stay alive, this idea of tagging in or trading is just going to come naturally. It doesn't necessarily need to be something you need to think a ton about. So you see, he's absolute, moves back into cover, saw off to our left there. Our teammate immediately starts to re-engage. And so at the end of this engagement, we're so focused on this angle that we're not reading our radar. So again, going back to our overall, what we're going to learn today, the third point is the issues you have when you tunnel vision an angle too much. So we've established, well, here's how you set up an angle, and here's how you properly, deal with these choke points. And now we're locking down these angles, but we're focusing so much on staring down those sight lines, right? Staring at that angle, waiting for someone to show up, knowing someone is there, that we forget to check our radar. So it's really important, if you do check an angle, that you get really good at what's called snap shooting. So snap shooting is when you see a target and you immediately snap on to your target. You just ADS in and start immediately firing. And you need to get comfortable, if you're going to cover angles like this, at lining up relatively close to head level. Doesn't have to be exactly head level every time, because you can make minor adjustments after you snap in. But what your goal is if you see someone, you can immediately snap in and get a headshot. And the whole time you can be paying attention to your radar, or at least have the ability to see your radar. Because if you don't have the ability to see your radar, then what's going to happen is what just happened in this engagement, is that someone's going to sneak up behind you and kill you for free, even though you could have very easily stopped this from happening to begin with. So here we pull back into cover, and now we can see right here there's someone on our radar, right? So someone is on our radar. We go to engage, and now that someone that was on our radar could be anywhere, because we're going to spend so much time here. So now that we've zoomed out and we've thrown our grenade, now we're tunnel visioning. Now we're just so laser focused on that target that we know is weak that you can't tell that there's a person here now. So there's still the one person in cafe, but now there's a new person here on your radar. And so by the time you finally notice them, it's way too late. So again, we're going to pick ourselves up, and we're going to wait for teammates. We don't necessarily want to push in like we're doing here. We want to wait for our teammates. Remember what I talked about trading in? If you overcommit to these situations where you're pushing into players, you don't give yourself an opportunity to trade out. You don't get an opportunity for your opponent to tag in for you and start taking damage. So again, it's always really important to stay close to cover best you can, especially off spawn. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to make any plays. You don't need to keep the game pace going really fast. You just all you want to do is focus on, let's wait for teammates. Let's get those angles down, and then when we're comfortable and we're all alive, then we're going to push in as a team. All right, so again, now we have an issue where we spawned, we tried to regroup with our teammates, and now we're technically split spawn and going to get surrounded because our teammate didn't try to survive or try to run away. So we're going to go for special here. This is a good move. We want to be able to properly defend ourselves against a multi-man push. Shotguns are a great way to do that. We're trying to cover our flank, and now we're all back together. So this is good. This is the position that you want to be in. And again, there's a lot of crossfire in this particular engagement, and that's okay. Ideally, we want to be a little bit more spread out. We don't want to be so close that we're going to start getting hit by all the same grenade. So one player should probably be out here in lobby. One player can be on the rocks, and then one player can be off here on the side, where you're all still firing on those same angles at the same time, But now no one can really hit us with the same grenade, right? If someone throws a lightning grenade, he's going to get one person here, he's going to get one person here, and he's going to get one person here. That's it. He can't hit all three of us. Same thing with any grenade, really. In the situation where that Titan immediately came flying out in the clip here, we were all basically bunched up here. And so if there's just one wall close to us, that lightning grenade is going to hit at least two of us. Possibly all three, depending on how close we are, really. We're probably going to get multi-axiom bolted. Probably all three of us are going to get axiom bolted. This is an issue. Like, when you push out in an open area, you need to fan out. So as you can see here, we finally fanned out at the end of that engagement. And our teammate doesn't really pay attention to that lightning and just dies for free. For literally zero reason. There's no reason. Alright, so what happens here is a common mistake that is very easily rectified. When you cover a choke point and you have a shotgun, or if you just have a close range primary, what you want to focus on doing is imagining, well, what if the person immediately slides out and challenges me in this choke point? Where are my advantages? Well, with the shotgun, my advantage is to be right in their face. So there's really no reason, especially after seeing they threw out all those lightning grenades, there's no reason for you to not hold the choke with your shotgun ready and basically bait them to come push you. Because remember we talked about earlier about defensive shotgunning, you are at an advantage around those corners because your opponent has to know exactly where you are and they have no idea. Unless they have, you smoked and you're hunted or something, or someone's on the outside giving scouting information, they have no idea the precise location of you. They only can guess. Whereas you know exactly where they're going to come out, right? You know exactly the position that this person is going to push through this door. They're going to be right in front of you. So here, your opponent is always going to be in this general area here, whether it be above it, here, right? This general area, somewhere in here. So knowing that, all you really need to do is aim for the center of this area. So if we aim for the center of this area here, so we'll draw our little cube again. If we aim for the center of this area, which is here, what we're going to be able to do is, especially as a shotgunner, you normally run higher sensitivity. So you can snap down or you can snap up to your target. And if your target happens to walk through at head level, you're going to be right on their chest, right? If you aim in the center. Issues happen when you aim low or you aim high and you start anticipating movement. The only time you really want to anticipate movement is if you're a sniper. Because snipers, you need to hit headshots. Like, that's the whole goal of a sniper, is to hit a headshot because it kills them immediately. With shotguns, again, same goal. You want to kill them immediately, but you don't have to have high precision. You just have to have the ability to properly track your target. The easiest way to do that is aim in the center and then adjust accordingly. Whereas if you were a sniper, instead, you would want to aim at head level pretty much at all points, or at crouch level pretty much at all points. You never, ever want to aim in the center because most likely it's just going to result in a body shot. If you're okay with getting a body shot, or it's just that close where you can follow up melee, great, aim for the body. But otherwise, you have to be aiming for one of these locations and you have to pick right. Because if your opponent slides out and you're aimed high, you're normally not going to have a chance to even land that shot. Or by the time you do get the body, you're not going to have enough time to swap off and finish them with a primary. Same thing the other way around. You can hit them in the body here, but again, you might not have enough time to switch to your primary to hit them and finish them off. We don't want to swap weapons in this situation. If we had had our shotgun out here, this person would be dead. That's it. He'd be dead. But if you're going to have your primary out, you need to be at the optimal range for your primary. Not where it can operate, but where it should operate. And pulses should operate outside of hand cannon range. They should operate at the 30 to probably 40 meter range, which is the edge of your radar. You should be on the edge of your radar. That's where your primary engagement space is with pulse rifles. You can go up comfortably as far as about 23 meters, which is the very beginning of the pie slice. Anything closer than that, you run the risk of getting shotgunned, you run the risk of getting killed with a sidearm, you run the risk of getting outgunned by a hand cannon. A lot of bad things happen once you're in that range with the pulse rifle. So if you're going to be this close, just have out your shotgun. Worst cases, you have to double slide in order to shotgun them. That's still going to probably be a better option than trying to finish someone with the primary. And we aim too high. You just aimed like way over that guy's head. All the aiming adjustments to shotguns mean that you don't get any help with that shot anymore. Before, that shot probably would have connected. Maybe even killed that guy. But it would have hit a lot more pellets than just the one you hit that guy with. And that follow-up melee would have killed him. So here, again, we're with our teammate. They just whiff a smash for basically no reason. This is going to be a common theme. They think that they know where you are, and they really don't, so they just panic smash. So here we're trying to trade out, and we just... Again, we're defensive shotgunning. We're waiting for our opponent to come around that corner, slide in and take care of them. I didn't like the slide back into the T. I would have liked to see you back down the ramp, but that's okay. It's kind of a panic moment. And here, again, we have the wrong weapon out. If we had our shotgun out, we would have survived the shoulder charge. And it's very obvious that there's only one location our opponent is gonna attack us from, right? It's just this door. It just opened. We can see on our radar players are just outside, right? Players are just out here. We can see that on our radar. So have your shotgun out, and you'll be able to cover this angle perfectly fine. You always have to keep in mind, if my opponent shows up in front of me right now, do I have the right weapon for that engagement? You always have to be asking yourself that. Because if you always have the right weapon out, you're going to see opportunities to succeed a lot more than if you have to jump through a bunch of hoops in order to salvage a bad situation. Because that was easily a situation where you could have got away with with not even trading at all. You would have just outright bodied that guy with a shotgun, and that would have been it. So Solo Nova here. No real reason to hold on to it because both the Titans are running Striker and the Hunter's a Tether. So you're not really holding it to save anything. And you don't need to hold it for multi-kills. Just use it for a free kill. Because if you can use that one kill to snowball an advantage, you should, right? You should convert that one free kill into 2 team kills after that, into that wipe. So here, when our teammate pops a super, we don't want to go the same direction. 2 reasons for that. One is because if we go in the same direction, our opponents, if they want to challenge, are going to be prepared for that angle that super is challenging from. So if you go in front of that super, you're the one going to get domed, right? And then it's not even a guarantee that your teammate that was behind you manages to kill the rest of the team. You want the super to act as bait, and you want to flank around and basically cut off their escape route. That's always the goal when someone on your team pops a roaming super, is you want to get into the escape route that your opponent's going to run away from that super. So if your teammate is pushing this way, and then the opponent is going to push this way, then you want to sweep around and meet them somewhere in the middle here, right? So you can attack them somewhere in the middle here as they float off towards you. So our swing around is a little late, and what ends up happening is we have to rely on our teammate to make up for our poor positioning, which is fine. I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's just good team play on your opponent or on your teammate's part. It was good play on your part to immediately get out of there as soon as you saw 2 players. So that was solid play. Could have potentially been disastrous. Again, we're just highlighting trading in and out here. We take a little bit of damage, we push in. Our teammates are taking a little damage, we push in for them. They push in for us. Back and forth, back and forth. No one's really dying. Or if someone is dying, it's the enemy team because we're managing our health as a team as opposed to managing our health as an individual. This is very powerful. It basically means instead of you as an individual have 200 health, you're fighting as a team with 600 health instead. And one player to be able to take out 600 health is a lot harder than 3 players taking out 200 health at a time and just chipping away at it. So we saw our teammate, again, he pushed in, we push in shortly thereafter. So they finally break the stalemate, getting that lightning grenade. We don't really respect it. I see this all the time. You need to destroy lightning grenades. And if you don't have time to destroy it, you just need to immediately abandon it. Sometimes it's not right. Sometimes it's not right to destroy a lightning grenade. Sometimes it's the correct thing to, instead of trying to destroy a lightning grenade, you just run away from it. Because you don't have enough time. Because if you try to wait to destroy that lightning grenade, you're giving your opponents enough time to push up wherever they need to push up, and you're still weak, and they're going to pick you off immediately. So if you don't have time to destroy a lightning grenade, you need to run away and reposition. If you do have time, then that's your main priority. Destroy a lightning grenade. Because then silly mistakes like that don't happen. And not necessarily on you, but maybe your teammate didn't know that there was a lightning grenade there. Maybe they weren't paying attention. Maybe they're just dumb. And you can shore up their stupidity by getting rid of it yourself. Be the smart one on your team. Make good decisions. So we waited for our teammates. Again, trading in and out. Trading in and out. This was sent to me by a guy who said that this was in a... they were running like an in-house sweat. So the level of skill in this game is a little bit higher than what we're normally used to reviewing. But still, there's a lot of good things that you as an individual, no matter what your skill level, should take away from this. You don't have to be on a team or even play with people on comms to be able to do this kind of movement or this kind of stuff. So here we see very quickly a highlight of why it's still dangerous to cuddle up like that, especially when supers are in play. We get 3-man. You know, we give the guy a 3-piece. He gets the saucy dance, and now we gotta, you know, respawn with our tail between our legs and try again. So again, still focusing. We're not completely committing. Even though we know where the opponent is, we don't necessarily need to completely commit. So here, we read radar well, but unfortunately we're a little bit too close to the door. We still get tethered. But we did manage to get 2 supers out of there, even though they got what is technically a team wipe. So what ends up happening is we just have to reset the engagement again. Push in a little bit too aggressively to try to regroup with our team. And here, like, you have time to destroy that lightning grenade. You had time to destroy that lightning grenade the entire time. So that's what you want to do. Just take out that lightning grenade and then be done with it. And then push in with your team. So when you push, so on the opposite side, we talked a lot about holding down choke points and how to defend them. So let's just touch on just very briefly how to push a choke point. So there's a couple things you need to keep in mind when you push choke points. The first is you need to keep in mind what your opponents are capable of doing. We know that there's 2 strikers and a Night Stalker on our enemy team, which means that any choke point is potentially a death trap because we're going to walk into a smoke, we're going to walk into a lightning grenade, and we're going to immediately get killed as we go through these pushes. So even though you have a numbers advantage, sometimes it's best to just let players go. You don't need to push them, take the free points and reposition out of a choke point. So you don't necessarily get immediately team wiped trying to push them. Same thing in trials. If you get a pick, but you have to push through a choke point through all those grenades, through all those abilities, through a super, maybe it's locked down with a sniper, you don't push it at all. Just let them get the res, take the free super energy, reset back to neutral, and try to get a better engagement for your team. So here, if we hadn't pushed through, then we wouldn't have died. Now, luckily, we do get that off that Axiom Bolt, and it stalls the engagement, or the engagement gets stalled long enough that it manages to take out 2 people. But more often than not, that kind of result is a rarity and not a norm. Just because you see something like that and you get away with it that one time doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. All right, so we're just waiting right now. We kind of miss our lightning grenades. So we need, again, even though we wasted a lot of time there, we still should have been trying to get to our teammates to regroup. we were weak, so we can't really work on that super to go around to surround our teammate, or to cut off the escape route. So all you really need to do is just stick together. Again, that's kind of the problem with pushing those choke points, again, is that if we're not close enough or it's too dangerous for us, we shouldn't be there really at all. Last Exit's a really hard map to push through into the enemy team a lot because of all these choke points and all these ways for you to get a lot of mileage out of your grenades and your smokes. Or just sit back and wait for someone to push a choke. So again, same thing with the enemy team. They pushed the wrong choke and just managed to get multi-naded. There was really not a lot that went into that entire engagement, and not a lot that needed to happen. It's very easy to punish players that try to push through these chokes. And that's pretty much the end of that. All right. So, kind of in conclusion, just to wrap up a lot of things we covered today. Again, you really need to focus on tagging in and out of your engagements using team health as opposed to individual health. When you cover choke points, remember that the defensive shotgunner is most often going to outgun the offensive shotgunner, all things considered equal. And when you are locking down these angles as a team, keep in mind that you need to be spread out. You need to be in a position where you can get a lot of crossfire and you can easily rotate to each other. And you have the ability to constantly be reading your radar so you don't get flanked. Because we saw in this match a few times, we got flanked, we got punished for it, and if we were just reading our radar, it would have never happened to begin with. As usual, if you want to send me gameplay to critique, you can always send it to keen@cruciblebootcamp.com. That's KEEN @cruciblebootcamp.com. Anything outside of sixes, I'll do threes, rumble, trials, a little bit of fours if you want me to do fours. There isn't a ton of strategy that goes into fours just because of the way the spawns work. It could be different now, but it plays a lot like sixes. If you want to support the stream, you can always become a Patreon backer. It's always appreciated. Go straight to the wedding. You guys know the deal. As usual, I've been your host, King Koala. This has been Crucible Boot Camp. I'll see you guys next time. Class is dismissed.